What's going on? Alex here, and in this video I'm going to be talking about a comment that I got in the previous video. Hey Alex, love these vids, was wondering what advice you would give to someone who works full-time inside a factory and wants to keep testosterone levels as high as possible. Lack of vitamin D and working with plastic all day is definitely affecting my testosterone. Any tips? Let's get into it. So, before I get into it, let me talk about why I can talk about this. So, since the age of 15, I've been working in factories. I worked in a butcher factory. I worked in McDonald's for 3 years, became a manager, super stressful, and Aldi. Now I run my own company. But I learned a lot of things while I was in those environments. So, a study from the University of Tasmania had 15 young athlete cyclists as their test subjects. So here's the study. So I can link it here. And the results were basically bromelain, the digestive enzyme in pineapple, was able to maintain testosterone levels in times of stress. So if you're an individual that's in a high stressful situation, you're in a situation where the environment is intense, the boss is a dickhead, there's just tension, it's constant fast-paced work, there's a lot of pressure, you're working with individuals. Especially if you're on the journey just like I am, you're probably different, you're more high performance, and you're working with individuals who just don't care. So you have to compensate for them. High stressful, no one really cares, whatever. So you have to do a bunch of things to keep your testosterone levels high. Because if cortisol is high, testosterone is going to be low. Cortisol is a stress hormone. So you need to focus on the things that will lower your cortisol levels. And another thing you mentioned, you have a deficiency in vitamin D. So you fix that by consuming more vitamin D with K2, which helps with absorption. Then you have getting plenty of sunlight, so on and so forth. Then plastic, you mentioned you're touching plastic, so on. So you need to have a process in place to methylate estrogen, because plastics can mimic the hormone estrogen in your body and convert your testosterone into estrogen. So looking into supplementing with taurine, because taurine has been shown to help with that, using methylators such as choline, which methylate estrogen out of the body. So using tactical supplementation like that. The next thing is focusing on the NTLS method. So, nutrition, training, lifestyle, supplementation. So like I talk in my programs, so you have your nutrition, training, lifestyle, supplementation, right? By the way, if you want to join the program, I will leave a link down below and you can book a call. But basically, first we start with nutrition. The first thing I would do in your position is don't eat in a caloric deficit. Download MyFitnessPal on your phone. Eat approved foods. Testosterone approved foods. So you have your fruits, roots, saturated fats, so on and so forth. Eat in a caloric maintenance or in a slight caloric surplus. Especially when you're working, you want to keep your glycogen stores topped up, because blood sugar can determine your mood. And the better you feel, that the more easier it is to work and keep your testosterone levels high. And it's going to keep your cortisol lower. The next thing is using things like nootropics, such as caffeine, piracetam. I would just focus on those two. Just focus on caffeine. Caffeine is perfectly fine. The next thing for nutrition, when you're working, having like orange juice and add some Himalayan pink salt. So you have the electrolytes, potassium, magnesium, plus calcium and sodium. So 4 electrolytes. You have them, you put it in your orange juice, you leave it somewhere. I used to leave it in the manager's office. I was a manager, so I just left it there. And when I was working every, 15, 30 minutes, I would walk in, take a few sips, because you're keeping the glycogen stores topped up. So that's one of the things I used to do. Keep fueling yourself, because that when you are depleted in glycogen, that's when your serotonin is going to spike. That's when you're going to feel super numb. That's when you're going to feel demotivated. That's when your testosterone is going to lower, and it's going to just give this compound effect. So keep your glycogen stores topped up. Next thing is, don't overwork yourself. That's a hard one, but do as little as you can. But to be honest, when you have high T and you're working at that place, I remember when I used to work at McDonald's, I was just mad. I was just working. I don't want to brag or blow my own trumpet, but when I worked there, I was the first manager to have 100% in a manager's verification in the history, because I was just high performer, and that was one of the signs that came to me. I need to do something on my own. So yeah, when you're going to have high testosterone, you're just going to be a high performer. So these are the main things I focused on. Keeping my glycogen stores topped up, eating plenty of food, just having plenty of food. Don't be in a caloric deficit. For training, when you're training in the gym, don't overtrain. You don't have to train 6 times a week, 2 to 3 times a week. Structuring a proper plan. If you know how to create a training plan, you can have better results than someone who trains 6 times a week. It's just having proper structure, proper programming, focusing on the androgen receptors, then lifestyle. Prioritizing your 9 hours of sleep. 9 hours of sleep, the time you go to sleep, the time you wake up at. Making sure you don't wake up in the middle of the night, because if you're waking up in the middle of the night, you're messing up with your REM cycles, and the longer you sleep without waking up, the longer your REM cycles are, and during REM sleep, that's when you produce testosterone levels. Men who sleep 8 hours per night have 200% more testosterone than men who only sleep 4 hours per night. So sleep is huge. Then stress. Eliminating any stress in your life, which is micronutrient deficiency, so on and so forth. Like here I mentioned your environment. Don't bother making enemies. Just do your work and go home. Work on your craft so that you can quit your 95. The first thing is, you're going to keep your testosterone levels high when you know deep down you're working to get out of that place, if that makes sense. When I was working at McDonald's, I didn't just go home and just chill, because that would have made it worse. Because when you're in work, it makes it worse. But I remember, I used to be on my phone, doing things, doing calls whenever I could, because I was a manager, so I had more wiggle room. Then when I was working in Aldi, that's all I did. Any moment I got. I remember when I started Natural Testosterone, I was working in Aldi. During the COVID, I was working 50 hours a week in Aldi while building Natural Testosterone. Built a social media following of 200,000 followers while working in Aldi. But I was able to maintain my testosterone levels high because I was driven, and I knew this was my way out. If I was just working, I would be super demotivated, because I'm like, oh, not this again. So that's another thing. Supplementation. You can use a lot of tactical supplementation, like I mentioned before, the taurine, the choline, the electrolytes, magnesium before you go to sleep, liver 2 to 3 times a week. What else? Doing things to de-stress yourself, grounding yourself, doing things that ground you, getting off social media. Social media can get you into scatterbrain and not present, because you're just watching these idiots do their thing and showing off lives that they don't actually have. So that's another thing. If I was to be working right now, I'll always be prepared, having plenty of food. There's not just mastering the basics, mastering the basic things that you know that you need to master, but you're trying to look for some tactic which is not going to work anyway. Focus on the 20% that will give you 80% of the results. So yeah, hopefully you got some value out of this video. It's just another thing. Pineapple, using pineapple in the morning, like use it frequently throughout the day. It doesn't have to be a huge amount, just a bit. Or you can just buy the bromelain enzyme, like supplement, and just use it throughout the day. I'm just trying to think of any other things I was doing. I was taking just the basic supplements. Nutrition, you have to be in a caloric surplus. If you're in a caloric deficit, that's going to mess you up. If you are in a caloric deficit because you want to lose body fat, I would definitely do intermittent fasting. Because if you're just eating a little bit but not eating, that's going to make it worse. Because you're not either cold or hot. So when you're intermittent fasting, you go into ketosis. And you're in that state, you're very focused and whatever. But then if you're eating a bit, you're coming in and out of ketosis, and that's going to make you groggy, and you're going to have these energy spikes. So if you're trying to cut weight, caloric deficit, intermittent fasting. If you're in a caloric surplus, your focus is just testosterone, so on and so forth. Caloric surplus, caloric maintenance, and having majority of your food before you work, during work, like you eat, you prepare food, like before you go to work, you prepare food, rice, beef, you have it there. You don't eat some shitty food that they sell you. Make sure you have proper food. I remember when I was working at McDonald's, I was going to college studying personal training and nutrition. I was training. I remember I would wake up 5-6 in the morning, prep all my food for the day. I would have a bag full of food, go to work, be 8 to 5, and I would spend like 2-3 hours on the bus every day because I would have to go from one end to the other. Then from 5 to 6 I would train. Then from 6 to 10 I would go to college, and then from 10 to 11 get back home, then go to sleep and repeat. So a priority is just food, getting the food in. Because when you start missing your meals, your glycogen stores are low, then you get stressed out, and it's this negative feedback loop. So yeah, that's my take on that. Doesn't get simpler than this.